Ex cheats on me before I take her on a week-long Portugal trip. The only reason I am posting this now is because I am just getting over her, year and a half later. This story starts off with butterflies and ends with demons, so before you read any further thought I'd give the luxury of stopping now. Also quite a long read. We went to Portugal for my oldest brother's wedding. So my ex, we will call her Karen, and myself met through some friends and hit it off immediately. We then spent every day together for the next 6 months, which I think was part of the problem. The first few months were wonderful, rainbows and butterflies. She was the first one to use the L word, but it took me a couple weeks after to say it back. One night, probably 3 months into the relationship, we go over to my parents' house to eat with my family and some friends. Everything is going so well up until we leave. I tell her bye, think she was going back to her dad's house because she still lived there, and she comes up to me and says the honeymoon phase is now over. At that point I'm shocked and confused by the statement. 1, I'm not even sure what that means, and 2, why does it ever have to be over? I ask her what that meant and she responds with, oh, it means we will have fights now and not everything will be happy-go-lucky. Now I am just frustrated and should have seen the red flag, but I was blinded by love. I ignore this statement and forget about it. But things do get worse. The next couple months are not terrible but way different than the beginning. Stuff that never bothered her before now bothers her. For example, I was planning on building a tiny home 800 sq feet before she ever came into the picture, and now she is complaining how small it will be and it's not the way she likes it. I am not kidding, she got pissed at me for not planning a house how she wanted it. This is like 4 months into the relationship, another red flag, but again blinded by love. Things continue like this up until the Portugal trip. I tried to save the relationship and do things like take her to the islands for a picnic or get her flowers and stuff like that, but nothing seemed to help. About a week before the Portugal trip I decide to take her to one of our local islands on the coast for a picnic/booze cruise. We are packing picnic stuff for the boat and out of nowhere she starts screaming at me because I took a glance at the TV while she was talking. College football was on. I am still paying attention to her but just took a glance over. We get in a huge argument and almost don't make it to the island. But I apologize and we end up going out on the water. This is where I deeply regret my decision. We set up the picnic and she starts to cry. I try to comfort her but she is pushing me away. I asked what's wrong? She answers with, I am starting to have feelings for my ex. Man, if I had left her on that island stranded, it would have been the best decision I have ever made in life. But the dumbass I am, I try to talk through it. Lots of emotion, crying, screaming and whatever else to come to the conclusion that we will be okay. LOL. We get home and discuss our plans for Portugal and I say the ticket is yours, it has your name on it, you have never been out of the country so I want you to go. So the next week we fly out to Portugal for my brother's wedding. Portugal is an effing dream, I will tell you what. The first day we went on an 80-foot catamaran to booze cruise around. For the rehearsal dinner we are at a top 5 boutique hotel in the world. Whatever the hell that means, but it was superb. Then the wedding is at an abandoned palace. Long story short, this trip was epic apart from Karen. So everyone at the wedding ate a 4-course meal together and at about the 3rd course things went south. Everyone is having a blast and emotions are flying around. My sister-in-law, different one than the bride at the time, sorry, have 3 older brothers, gets super emotional about her father that might not be at her wedding since he was a little older. My sis-in-law then asks Karen if she could have some of her wine and go to the bathroom. Karen says something extremely rude, although I think she was kidding. My sis-in-law thankfully did not cause a scene there but ran to the basement. 5 or so minutes go by and Karen says to me I probably should apologize, and I am like, yeah, get your ass down there. I thought everything would be okay, but little did I know this would ruin my brother's wedding for me. Close to 30 minutes go by and I have no idea what is going on, so I decided to check it out. I passed my sis-in-law on the way down and asked where Karen is and she said she was probably still in the basement. I go down and she is bawling her eyes out. I try to comfort her and be there and have empathy, but of course nothing works. This goes on for at least an hour, missing my brother's first dance and cake cutting. I am frustrated at this point and finally get her to go up to the dance floor to have some fun. The rest of the night was great and a lot of fun. The next day things were a little awkward for Karen. She was shut off by my sister-in-laws and my family was not too friendly either, but it is our last day. Our travel home just continues the Karen saga. We get extremely delayed and end up staying the night in the airport. Karen wants to critique everything I do, including what food I get or where I sleep and stuff like that. For 36 bloody hours I had to deal with this. The way there, our travel time was 16 hours. But we eventually got home. We got home and I think everything is fine. She asks me to go get lunch and I am like, cool, yeah, let's do it. We get sushi, I pay. I paid for 99% of everything, and we go back to the car. She then says to me, I cannot do this anymore, I have to break up with you. I am at loss for words. The only thing I can say is get out of my car and find your way home. She continues to try to contact me for weeks and of course I succumb, but eventually I cut off contact and move away. I was actually planning on moving for the longest time before she came around, but she prolonged my move. About 4 months go by without any contact until I find out from her now boyfriend that she was cheating on me prior to the Portugal trip. I lose my mind and go into a depression I have never felt before. It sucked for a while there, but I eventually grew the balls to confront her about it. Of course she denies it, but she will never grow and own the shit she has done. I used to blame myself for all our fights/problems, but now looking back at it I know the real reason, which eventually gave me the closure I needed. Sorry for making this story so long, but I needed to get it off my chest. Thank you for reading if you made it this far. Oh yeah, also forget to mention at the beginning of the relationship Karen literally says to me crying, don't ever leave me for a prettier girl. I find that quite ironic and funny. Comment. Bipolar much, Karen. I think the fights were her trying to get you to break up with her for 2 reasons. She was gutless and could play the victim afterwards. Let your sills vet future women for you. Cannon round dodged there. My man, you dodged a bullet. No, fuck that, you dodged a grenade. You sound like an amazing guy. Go out, have some fun and enjoy life. It is far better to be happy alone than it is to be miserable with someone. This was something someone told me a long time ago. Unfortunately, being very young and very stupid, I didn't give the sentiment much thought until years later. By the time it finally sank in, I was a decade into a horrible and abusive relationship/marriage, and can now honestly say that this is the most true advice. It became my mantra through years-long divorce and custody nightmares, and is still advice that I keep close to my heart, and share as often as it's needed. Sounds like you definitely learned this lesson the hard way, and thankfully already know that you're far better off without your ex. Sometimes lessons are painful, and expensive, embarrassing and many other things, but as long as we learn from it, all is not lost. Glad to hear you're healing and have moved on, friend. I wish you all the luck and happiness in the world, and for your ex, I wish her all the karma she's earned. You dodged a bullet, man. Imagine being married to that with kids and having to do what is needed. It's what happened to me minus the kids. It is very jarring when it happens so suddenly, and no matter what you do to make it right, even though it becomes much clearer later on that she was not all there. And on top of that, the infidelity. Sometimes you can do as much right as possible, but this is how it turns out. There really are sociopaths out there. It may not feel that way, but as you get over it, there is a sense of gratitude that it could have been much worse, especially when you think about what was going on when the mask fell. Next story 2. Fiancé cheated on me with my father. Wow, hello everyone, I didn't expect to come back to Reddit and have this much support. I didn't really plan to update at all, I just wanted to put what had happened out there and hopefully get some advice. After I wrote down all that happened, I closed my computer and kind of fell into a depression. After I posted, it hit me like a train. To the ones who think it's fake, I wish I was this creative. I'd write books instead of working a 9 to 5. I'll try to reply more on this post. I just logged back on, and it was honestly too much to try and reply to every comment. Just know I read through most of them, and I truly appreciate everyone's inputs, both negative and positive. So, the day after I posted, I tried to get into contact with my mother, but none of my calls were connecting. I wanted to see if she would get lunch with me, and I'd tell her everything. After about a dozen tries, I decided to get into my car and go to my mother's house. She needed to know what happened as soon as possible, even if talking about was going to make it hurt all over again. During the drive, I thought about what I would say and how I would say it. That made me start to panic. I had to pull over twice to throw up. It's not every day you have to tell your mom that her husband is screwing your fiancé. I pulled into the driveway and sat in my car for a moment to calm down and gather my thoughts. I was in my car for a few minutes when my mother threw her front door open, so I stepped out of my car. She started cursing at me, saying how dare I come to her home after I hit my father for trying to break up a fight between Elle and I. She called me every name in the book and called me an abuser. She told me I needed to leave since Elle isn't ready to forgive me yet, and that if she's smart she hopefully never will. Yes, apparently my father took Elle to my family's home and told my mom that Elle and I argued, and when my father tried to spot it, I hit him. She continued on for a while until I finally snapped and said, "Really, Mom, because your husband is effing my fiancé, that's why I hit him, and if you can't take my word for it, I have a video, I'll send it to you, but because my own mother can talk to me like this, don't expect to see me again. I don't want to hear your apology when you finally figure out that you're just as shit of a mom as my piece of shit father." Her face dropped. She looked like what I must have looked like when I first walked into my apartment and caught them. I pulled out my phone and sent her the video. My mom took hers out and turned it on. She pulled up the video and watched up until the part where I turn on the light. She then put her phone down. She looked up at me, but I turned and went into my car. I backed out of her driveway. I looked at her before I took off and she was in tears. My heart felt for her, but too much was said during that fight for me to pull back in and forgive her. When I got home, I started clearing everything out of my apartment that had to do with Elle or my family. I boxed all of Elle's things up and put them next to the front door. Legally this has been her place of residence, so I can't technically kick her out. Her name isn't on the lease. Also, she's the type of person who shies away from conflict, and if she returns other than to pick her things up, there will be plenty of conflict. Anything that had to do with my parents I boxed up and put into storage. Like I said in my first post, we were a very close family, but I've never had a problem cutting toxic people out of my life. I texted Elle's parents and told them calling off the engagement and told them she's been cheating on me. I thanked them for everything they've done for me. Our relationship was still building, but they were kind and supportive of me, so this just added more hurt to the mix. I finished by asking if they would come pick up all of her belongings. I haven't gotten a response from them yet, but I'm hoping they come grab her things, so Elle doesn't have a reason to come back here. Comment: I figured he lied when your mother wasn't answering. She must have said some stupid shit for you to leave like that. The balls on your dad to bring Elle to your mother. Someone would get stabbed in my social circle. Not saying me. Wishing the best. I'm going to say this: don't be mad at your mother. She's a victim of this, too. Unfortunately, your father, the POS that he is, lied to her to cover his tracks. If she had heard from you before your father got to her, things would have been different. Your mother is going to need you, just as you are going to need her, so take some time to cool down, then reach out to her. I don't know if I could forgive a mother who said such hurtful things as it sounds like she said to you either. However, she has obviously known your father longer than you and presumably trusted him, likely more than you even trusted your fiancé just from the length of their marriage. Add to that level of trust, it wasn't you against your father but your father and your fiancé claiming you were hurting your fiancé and dad was protecting her. The audacity of him to take her to your family home just shows how much control he thinks he has over the narrative. She had over a day of them telling their story and how shocking your behavior had been. While I agree that she should have listened to your side before going nuclear, the level of manipulation your father is capable of and the sob story of protecting the poor girl, her future daughter, and how many people hide abusive natures, so I am saying maybe try to reach a level of understanding of what she did even if forgiveness isn't possible. Just think back to 1 month ago, would you ever have believed your father or fiancé would ever be capable of this? Now would your mother have ever believed you would hit your father for any reason a month ago? What could be so bad that you would hit him? Would she have ever considered the possibility of an affair between them? So, she has 2 manipulative people in her house, a husband who has been hit out of the blue. It is easier for her to then believe one impossible thing, you being an abuser, than multiple other scenarios which haven't even been presented to her. So, she wanted to support the poor abused girl. Additionally, I would think cutting her out completely now would just allow your father more power in the situation. Even if you ultimately can't forgive her, I just wouldn't want to leave her at the mercy of your father and your fiancé both, even if you ultimately cut her out of your life later because what she said was too unforgivable. I really hope they both get some karmic justice soon.